Death Valley, a desert known for being extremely hot and a tourist site in the United States. But it's also known for being a ruthless place, with several mysteries of people going missing or even losing their lives inside the park. And in this video, I'll be talking about one of those disturbing cases, the disturbing mystery of the Death Valley Germans. But before we get into it, thank you to our Patreon support Pawn. And I'm Sir Chris, I explore the internet and I make videos about it. Let's go. I'll be mentioning the 4 tourists as the quote-unquote family for the sake of explanation. And much of the information you're about to see comes from a website created by Tom Mahood, which you'll get to know him. It all started in July 1996, when a family of 4 German tourists went on vacation to the United States, namely Egbert Rimkes, who was 34 years old, his 11-year-old son George Weber, Egbert's girlfriend Cornelia Mayer, who was 27, and her 4-year-old son Max Mayer. As soon as the family arrives in Los Angeles on July 8th, they go to Dollar Rent-A-Car and rent a minivan, a green Plymouth Voyager from 1992, which had to be returned on the 26th of the same month. Sources do not specify what they did there, but it is known that they stayed in San Clemente for some time, during which time Egbert, on July 12th, ended up making a call to his bank in Germany to request a transfer of $1,500, in which that money was transferred to a bank in Los Angeles. This call proves to us that Egbert underestimated the amount he was going to spend on the trip. The family eventually goes to Las Vegas and ends up staying at the Treasure Island Hotel and Casino for a while. There, I believe they formulated a plan for the trip that they were going to take 5 days before they had to return to the airport. On July 22nd, the family ends up checking out of the hotel and they head to the Death Valley National Park, with intention of seeing tourist spots and landscapes, and eventually passing through Yosemite Park, and then heading back to Los Angeles to deliver the car on the 26th and catch their flight on the 27th. They only had 4 to 5 days to do approximately 1,351 kilometers, certainly a race against the clock. So, with no time to waste, they hit the road. The family's first stop was at the Furnace Creek Visitor Center, where they purchased 2 booklets about Death Valley in German. A thing that I didn't told you was that before the family left the hotel in Las Vegas, Egbert had sent a fax to his ex-wife asking for extra funds, which never happened. That means that from that moment, their following actions needed to be well calculated to not only save time, but money. As it was getting late, to save money, they ended up driving another 29 kilometers on backcountry roads to Hanaupa Canyon Road, in which there, they set camp for the night. On the 23rd, they passed through more backcountry roads until they reached the Warm Springs camp, where Cornelia writes their names in the visitor's notebook, saying that they will pass through the route since older visitors did the same. But usually, the route that the other visitors were referencing to was the Mango Pass, a route completely impossible to pass with their minivan. For you to know how hard Mango Pass really was, there, even the most competent 4x4s would have trouble going through. And just like that, the family went off, never to be seen again. Since the family left no trace of ever leaving the USA, an Interpol alert was sent on the 14th of August with intention of finding the 4 German tourists, but they would be met with a dreadful silence. On October 21st of 1996, on a routine flight searching for drug manufacturing labs in the wilderness of Death Valley, Ranger Dave ends up finding something he wasn't expecting when arriving at the Hanville Springs. He finds a vehicle that was in the middle of an isolated area. Dave is more surprised when he lands and realizes that he was staring at a normal minivan that was dusty, stuck, had 3 flat tires, and was locked in an area where such vehicle wouldn't make that far. When searching for the license plate, Dave noticed that the minivan had been declared stolen on September 10th, and the reason why they took so long to declare it was due to company's policy. Upon seeing and researching the names of the last owners, Dave gets the information that it had been rented by 4 German tourists who had an Interpol alert, and so the investigation begins. During the initial investigation, they discovered that the minivan's tires had burst 60 meters before the current position. Around this minivan, there were cat holes and food wrappers on the floor, which proved that even after it got stuck, the family must have stayed there for a while. Inside, there were items that confirmed the previous timelines of events. Among several items, there were some important ones, such as Egbert's wallet, which still had his cards, 1 camera with spare rolls, 1 tent, and 1 sleeping bag. It even seemed like, when they left, they intended on returning back to the van. With these discoveries, a large-scale search ends up taking place to the point of having 250 people in total. Through investigations, authorities confirmed that the family had gone from Warm Springs Camp to the Stone Cabin, an old cabin that now serves as a survival shelter, in which there for some reason they take the flag that was now inside of the van, and the family advances to Mangle Pass, which they realize that it was impossible for them to pass, and so they go back. But instead of going down the street they came from, they turned right and went through Anvil Canyon, since allegedly in their booklets, the map said that this route would bring them back to West Side Road, the street before Warm Springs. But they didn't know that that road was barely usable, and it was made illegal in 1994, leading them to getting stuck. And it's from here that clues begin to run dry, because over the course of 4 days, the searchers ended up only being able to find a few clues, such as an empty Bud Ice beer bottle 2.7 kilometers away from the minivan, a claim of 2 German canteens 5.6 kilometers away from the minivan, but the one who made that allegation never came forward. And finally, one important report. Before Ranger Dave found the minivan, there was a report of one different ranger who had found a single sleeping bag 28 kilometers away from the location of the minivan. But since at the time they did not know that anyone was missing, he ended up discarding it. It could have been the sleeping bag that was missing from the van, but we'll never know. And eventually, the investigation was called off on October 26th. With the lack of clues or closure of this case, people started to speculate about what could have happened to the Death Valley family. Among those theories, one of them, the family faked their own disappearance to start new lives in a new country. And it became somewhat credible due to Egbert's ex-wife confirming that there were some custody issues with her son. And also due to his co-workers stating that Egbert mentioned that he wanted to move to Costa Rica. But that one was eventually proven unlikely due to Cornelia allegedly having a thriving business in Germany. And from a lot of places, why would they do that in an isolated and unforgiving area? Or even the family being found by criminals, or getting caught by the followers of Charles Manson. Or the family saw something that they shouldn't. And unfortunately, with clues getting cold and everything leading to dead ends, the case fell into obscurity. Until 2009.
Well, tonight, a 13-year-old mystery solved. In 1996, some German tourists drove into Death Valley
and vanished without a trace.
In 2009, things took an interesting yet tragic turn. Tom Mahood, a private citizen, ends up becoming obsessed with this cold case, to the point that he decides to take matters into his own hands. That year, he joins the Riverside Mountain Rescue Unit, which is a volunteer rescue team, and he eventually takes a man-tracking course. Through his contacts, he learns more about the case from people who were present in the main investigation, and gathers all the information, including that which never made into the official reports, such as the German canteens. With all the pieces together, it was time to put them into practice. With this, Tom makes 2 trips in total. In the first one, he ends up going alone to Death Valley National Park and takes the route that the same family had taken. He visits the places of the evidence, recreates them, and even puts himself in their shoes. Although it did nothing, it later proved to be essential. Because while he was reflecting in his house on what could have happened to the family, something just clicked. And Tom ends up creating a very credible theory, or as he likes to say, a series of reasonable, honest mistakes. Tom's theory was that after the van got stuck, Egbert leaves the family in the minivan while he tries to see where they were. He ends up walking 2.7 kilometers, sits in the shade of a bush, and drinks a beer while thinking about a plan. This theory is supported by the butt prints that were found next to the beer bottle. From here, Egbert, as he was European, noticed that in the booklet, the border of the China Lake military base appeared, saying it was 13 kilometers south, but in reality it was much more. As in Europe, military bases are surrounded by fences patrolled by security guards, and Egbert assumed that American bases were the same, but sadly it was wrong, a credible mistake. As the other options didn't promise the quick extraction, that was his plan. So Egbert leaves the empty bottle in the bush to eventually know that in a bit they had to turn south and walk in the direction of the base. And with that, Egbert returns to the family, where they stayed inside of the minivan for the night, as proven by the cat holes. And in the next morning, the family left with the intention of coming back, so they locked the van and walked the same path that Egbert did, without feeling that they were in a life or death situation. They see the empty bottle and knew that in a bit, they had to turn south. in which, if true, they could have only passed by 2 of the 6 routes, which coincidentally were in areas that had not been investigated. But as temperatures reached 51 degrees Celsius, the family must have suddenly succumbed to the weather, the kids being the first ones to die, and then the parents. That must have been so rough, dude. Like, imagine seeing your children die in such a painful way, man. And with that theory, his heart was invested. He formulated a plan to cover all the 6 routes to try and find something, or even to bring closure to this case. And with that comes the final trip, which changed the fate of this cold case forever. On November 11th, Tom Mahood and Les Walker, 2 hikers and searchers, set out to camp for several days in Death Valley to cover the routes that the family could have taken. Although the first day brought nothing, things would get a big turn in the morning of the second day. That morning, they both split up to cover more ground, with only a radio to maintain communication, until just 43 minutes later, Les Walker finds a bottle of wine, and then a bottle of Bud Ice that was worn out, and when they least expected it, Walker finds something that makes Tom go to him quickly. Before Walker found the bones, he also found 1 toothbrush, 1 toothpaste, pieces of paper from a German journal, shoes, and Cornelia's wallet with cards and her ID. After these discoveries, Les Walker ends up finding several bones approximately 13 kilometers away from the minivan, after which they contacted the authorities. Authorities believed that the bones belonged to a man and a woman, but through testing, only Hagbert Rimkus could be identified, as the rest of the bones were severely dried out. Authorities also found small bones, which could be the bones of the family's children, but they couldn't officially confirm it. And with Tom's and Walker's efforts, the cause of the parents' death was heat stroke due to extreme high temperatures at the time, while the children's fate remains unsolved to this very day. Yes, of course. We will never know what exactly happened to the family, or what really made them walk in that direction, but at least somebody brought closure to this mysterious case. There's even a few remaining questions, such as, where are the kids? Why didn't they come back to at least fill the bottles of water in the stone cabin? And if they did, could the story have been any different? But to be fair, they weren't expecting to get stuck. Sadly, we're left in the dark. To this day, George Rimkus and Max Mayer are still filed as missing, as a reminder of how unforgivable Death Valley really is. If you're going to venture into the wilderness, please be ready, since a small mistake can come at a high price. If you watched the video until the very end, what about more in real life videos? I've tried something new, so if there's anything that I can improve, tell me, since I've never did a video focusing in a specific case. Thank you so much for watching, and take care, my friend.